because I'd wake up in the mornings and I would like see him reading his Bible.
Wow.
And then I would see like him and a couple of the other teammates that I had, like they would go to a certain room certain times of the week and they're like praying together.
Interesting.
And what I later found out was like one of the guys they were praying for every week was me.
Hey again, guys, welcome back to The Grace Effect. My name is Dom, and this is my brother Tannan, and we are here to encourage and equip you guys to walk out God's grace effect in your life. All right, guys, welcome back again to The Grace Effect. This is episode number 3. Number 3, man. We got an exciting episode for you guys. Later on, we're going to be hearing about our brother Tannan's story. The episode before you heard about mine, but now I'm excited to dive into my big brother Tannan's story. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be impactful. But for now, we got some good news that we want to share.
We got some good news.
So as you guys remember from the previous episode, we love to incorporate good news because the world is full of bad news. You can go anywhere in the internet, TikTok, society. Everyone's kind of addicted to bad news. So we, the people of good news, the people of Jesus, what we want to do is we do want to share that good news. So Tannan, what you got for us today, man?
Absolutely, dude. So I found this story coming out of Louisville, Kentucky. A lot of people say Louisville different ways.
Yeah.
Louisville. I mean, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
There was a bus driver, a school district down there, bus driver by the name of Larry Farish Jr. 35-year-old dude, hits home. I'm kind of right there in that age bracket.
Wow, okay.
A dude out there just like trying to make an impact on kids, and was on his bus route one morning, and he had a particular student that typically was always very bright, very energetic.
Yeah.
Always had a smile on his face in the morning. This particular morning, this student was crying. Acted like he just did not want to go to school. And so Larry, the bus driver, he's engaging this kid, asking them what's wrong, and the kid is just in tears. And it was pajama day at school. We've all had those kind of days at school.
Yeah.
So it was like one of those special days, everyone's dressing up, and this particular young man did not have any pajamas to wear.
Boo.
And so felt left out, was ashamed to go to school, did not want to go to school. And so at that point, then and there, Larry said, I got to do something about this.
All right, what you got, Larry?
And so he drops the kids off at school, and then as soon as he drops all the kids off at school, he immediately goes to the store, buys a couple pairs of pajamas, and goes back to the school.
No way.
And drops them off to this particular student. And the student is literally dancing for joy.
Let's go.
And is able to finish out with a lot of hope. And a lot of some of the school, the teachers and the administrators, they saw like what he had done, and they celebrated that amongst the school system and highlighted what Larry had done. But a guy that went out of his way to make sure a young little dude his day was made. I'm all about those kinds of stories.
Nice. That's incredible.
We need more Larry Farish Jr.'s.
Yeah, live
in the
like
world.
Larry, guys. Let's go.
Live like Larry. That's good.
That's awesome, man. Cool story. So for my good news today is, if you guys remember recently, there was just a national championship for college football.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So we had Notre Dame against Ohio State. I will say we live in the home state of Indiana.
Oh, we are in the breadbasket for Notre Dame football right now.
So our entire just like city and state was on fire for this game. And not only that, the whole rival situation between them and Ohio State, it's a huge moment.
Yep.
It's a big moment for each player, each coach. Everyone's kind of embracing the attention and getting ready for getting their minds ready for the game, and all these things are kind of happening. But what's really awesome is the quarterback for Notre Dame. His name is Riley Leonard.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy he's been an incredible quarterback obviously all year to make it to the championship. But one consistent theme that he always kind of has is he does this thing where he gives glory back to God.
Wow.
And let that be a testament to young athletes that, man, let everything you do, no matter how big you get, no matter how much status you receive, how much praise you receive, to give it back to God. And he had another one of these moments to where after the game, after they had lost the biggest game of most of their careers.
Yeah.
They lost this game, and Riley is getting interviewed. He's getting spoken to. And he says this, and he says, how can I essentially deny God's grace over my life? Who am I to say that God has not done so many things for me?
Wow.
And even in the midst of defeat, he was still giving glory back to God. Wow. And I think that's just absolutely incredible. Again, being in that mindset, he could have been in a place of sorrow.
Yeah.
I feel bad, I should have done better. I should have done this. And I'm sure he had those thoughts, but at the end of the day, he recircled back to the fact that he is there because of God.
Wow.
And
That's
the
good.
platform that he has is there to glorify God. So, man, I thought that was really cool just to hear someone in that space to purposefully give glory back to God in those ways, man. So
what an example, like you said, to young athletes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a lot of things that could be said in that moment. So to choose to praise the Lord and to give him the credit, even in a loss,
yeah,
that's powerful. That's some good news right there.
Absolutely. So that's our good news segment. And I'm excited for this one because now I get to hear about your story, Tannan. Yeah. And for small context, Tannan is a mentor of mine. I love this brother. He helps me out in so many ways. It would take too long to count. So I appreciate his life, and I'm actually really excited to hear his story so I can hear essentially the roots of where you came from and how you found the Lord and what that journey kind of looked like for you, man. So start where you want to start.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate that. It's been fun growing our friendship together and kind of growing our friendship even in a new way through this podcast has been fun as well. And so for me, I grew up in Indiana, not too far from here, about 2 hours south of Elkhart, northern Indiana. And I grew up in a household, 2 parents, mom and a dad. They loved me. They loved my sister. They loved each other.
Yeah.
They weren't perfect by any means, but what parent is, but they provided a consistent, I would say, trustworthy home, which is huge. As I've grown up and experienced more and more life, the more and more that I have grown to appreciate living in an environment like that. And so they provided that, and we grew up going to church. The church that we attended, they had, I think, Wednesday night church. They had Sunday morning services, and then we actually went to a church that back in the day, they had Sunday night church.
Let's go.
So the pastor was on double duty on Sundays,
wow.
preaching a sermon in the morning and then coming back in the evenings and doing something else. And so we were in church quite a bit, and there was a lot of really amazing seeds that were planted in my life during that season of time as I was growing up. And so as I kind of got older, kind of to some of the points that you mentioned in your story, and this idea that as a kid, the faith and following Jesus, it really was. It was a big idea. It was a big concept. We learned about Jesus and these Bible stories in Sunday school class, and I heard people that I respected talking about these things. But it was kind of like a very abstract thought. It was not something that I actually felt or really ever took hold of for myself.
Gotcha.
And so as I got older, had some pretty incredible friends that I had growing up. We were all just thick as thieves. And we were all kind of in the same boat, honestly, where if you would have asked us, hey, are you Christians? Like, we probably all would have said yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of those answers would have really been based on our parents and the fact that we all went to church.
Yeah.
That's really where our faith was bound in.
Okay.
Was certain things that we did.
Got you. And what age is this with you and your friends?
Yeah, so this is probably through middle school, young high school.
Oh wow. Okay.
We were still going to youth group and stuff, primarily because we were being forced to.
Sure.
But we were the youth group kids that were trying to escape the youth group.
Hold up. Escape the youth group?
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of those guys where, like, we loved ball, we loved sports. We did not necessarily care about learning more and more about who Jesus was. And so, I mean, we would get there, we'd all be gathered up, and every week we tried to concoct up some kind of new plan to slowly get ourselves out of the room. And I remember the church that we went to oftentimes, it was big, there was lots of rooms.
That makes sense. All right.
And so this was pretty wild, but there was a season of time where we were successfully escaping like every week.
Wow.
For a series of probably 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
And we had an ongoing wrestling tournament in the midst of that time where we would go to this one specific room.
Let's go.
And I don't know if all the leaders at this point were just like,
where are they?
I don't know if they were just fed up, if they had just kind of given up.
Yeah.
Or what, but for 4 to 6 weeks, I mean, we had this one room all to ourselves. And I mean, there was couches, chairs in this place, and I mean, we destroyed this room.
No way.
And it was one-on-one, no holds barred wrestle matches. And it's a miracle that nobody like ended up with any broken bones or anything, because it got close a couple times. And so we would just, I mean, that's just who we were. We just did not really care. And so that carried on certainly through high school. And for some of me and my friends, like some of my guys were really big into football, were really good at football. Particularly for me, basketball is what caught my attention.
Sure.
Wait.
Okay. Everyone, if you don't know Tannan, and it may be hard to see this while sitting in a chair, but can you just, for context for the audience who doesn't know you, sir, how tall are you?
So I'm 6'6".
6'6". No wonder you were playing basketball.
Yeah, so I had a pretty decent growth spurt my sophomore year of high school.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
So I made a pretty big jump, and so that helped me out.
A giant jump.
Certainly on the court. And so basketball is something as a kid I loved. My dad played college basketball, and so it was always a very important part of my life, something I always had done. And as I got into high school, and then as I started to grow, got more athletic, basketball essentially is what I threw my entire life into. It became my identity. It became a source of joy.
Yeah.
And it became probably the biggest source of my frustration as well, because it got to a point where I had some pretty lofty goals, and I wanted to go play Division I basketball.
Yeah.
We had sent a guy my freshman year. We had sent a guy to Purdue to play. His name was Chris Kramer, and was an incredible player for our high school. Became an incredible player at Purdue.
Wow.
Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he was big time. Like, he was an amazing high school athlete. And so I got to watch all of this.
Yeah.
And so as a younger guy, I was like, man, I want to go play Division I basketball.
Sure.
And so I did what I needed to do to try to make that happen. And I was gaining some ground on that. But as things kind of progressed, if there were games or practices that were going well, my joy, my satisfaction, my ego, it was in good shape. Like, I felt good. But if I had a bad game, like, I can remember vividly, there was a game we were playing at Newcastle High School, in the biggest high school gym in the world, actually.
Yeah, wow.
There in Newcastle, Indiana. and this massive gymnasium, probably 14,000 seats in this place. And at this point,
this is high school?
This is high school. It's the biggest high school gym in the entire world. Is in Newcastle, Indiana.
You must, okay, before the game, did you feel the pressure of that at all? Or was it just like another game? Or were you like, it's go time?
So it was actually, there wasn't a ton of pressure. What was actually very odd and hard to get used to was most high school gyms are somewhat smaller.
Somewhat.
So you've got, like, if you can think of a high school gym, a lot of the walls are like kind of right behind the baskets.
Yep.
And so for this, it was completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like an actual big arena feel.
Sure, yeah.
And so there was a ton of just open space behind the rims.
Yeah.
And so the effect that had on the jump shot was something I had not ever faced before. And so when we were practicing, when we were getting in the warm-up lines, I immediately noticed, like, man, this is tough to shoot in. Like, this is hard to get used to. And the depth perception was just a lot different.
Yeah.
And so we get into the game, and at this point, I was averaging probably 19 or 20 points a game. Like, I was having a really good...
Oh, you was cooking.
I was having a really good run up until this point. And we get out to the floor. Newcastle had a great team, and they defended me with this, like, short 5'10" running back that they had from their football team, who also played on their basketball team. And this dude was 5'10", probably 210 pounds.
Yeah.
And he is just a rock.
Yeah.
And he face guarded me for the whole first half. And I couldn't do anything.
Dang.
I could not shoot. I airballed my first, like, 2 or 3 shots. And I think I finished the game 1 for 15.
Wow.
And we lost the game. I got subbed out for the final time. I was ticked. I was mad. And I remember going to the very end of the bench, and I just kicked the chair.
Oh, man.
All the way at the end. The whole gym saw it. Coaches saw it. That did not end well for me. But that was kind of an example of those moments where when ball was not going well, I was not a pleasant person to be around.
Sure.
And my life did not feel very good at all. And that was a lot to do with the fact that my identity, my worth, my value as a person was completely tied to the game. And God really began to shake that up in me. My senior year, we had a coaching change, which was devastating for me. The coach that we had was, he was kind of like a second dad to me. He meant a lot. And so he left, and we brought this new coach in.
Sure.
And unfortunately, he and I did not see eye to eye on a lot of things. And that was really, really tough. And so I got into some trouble a little bit throughout the season. And when you were a player like me, if you get in trouble a little bit, a lot of those big time schools, they don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
They don't want to take a chance. And so a lot of those big goals that I had slowly began slipping away.
Got you. And let me ask you this. When you say, like, more troubling situations, was it externally from basketball, or was it internally attitude-wise and things of that nature?
Yeah, so it had a lot to do with myself, where I had a pretty big ego and I had a pretty bad attitude.
Kind of a hothead.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when there would be some disagreements between me and the coach, there was a couple things I did not handle very well.
I see. Okay.
And so I wasn't always the best. I wasn't always the best and most coachable guy.
Okay.
At certain moments, and so that put me into a tougher position. And ironically, the only schools that were left recruiting me were smaller private Christian schools. And so I got to a place where I kind of just reconciled to myself, like, I want to keep playing basketball. And no matter where that is, no matter where I can get an opportunity, that's what I wanted to do. basketball was what kept me in school. I was not the greatest of students. I didn't have a great passion for school. And so basketball is what kept me accountable. It's what kept me grounded. And so I knew if I was going to go to college, basketball was going to have to be the ticket.
Okay.
That's what was going to have to be the accountability force for me. And so got an opportunity to go play at Grace College, Warsaw, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
They brought me up for a visit and walked into their gym, their facility, and was like, man, this place is pretty sweet.
Nice.
Like, for a small college, basketball, like this is probably as good as it's going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a strong emphasis on faith. Coach Jim Kessler, strong man of God, and he was not apologetic to me and to my family when he recruited me and told me what the program was about and what they valued. And even from the very beginning, I recognized, like, I'm going to have to kind of fake it till I make it here, because I'm not fitting some of these qualifiers that he's looking for in this program.
Nice. So quick question for you, man. So you were saying that you grew up in the church and that, youth group and all these things. When it came to this essentially collision of faith and basketball, my question to you is, like, it was completely worth it to you to just be able to keep playing basketball and essentially not care about the faith side? How do you think that made your view on your coach, and essentially going to be your new teammates and the whole identity that you're stepping into?
Yeah.
How did that, like, walk me through that a little bit of your mindset of, okay, how do I do this?
Yeah. At this point, like, I didn't have a faith, nor would I have really said I did.
Wow. Okay.
I got to a place where I recognized enough to know what the faith was about, and I would say what the faith required.
Interesting. Okay.
And I was not in a place where I wanted to meet those requirements.
Fair enough.
I did not want to follow Jesus and do the things he was going to ask me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to lay down the things that made me feel really, really good. All the idols that I had, whether it was hanging out and partying with friends, relationships with girls, that I was incredibly selfish, incredibly self-seeking in. I didn't want to give those things up. And a lot of those things were kind of a product of basketball and kind of what I had been able to build there. And so that was something I didn't want to lose. I was clinging to those things for joy, for satisfaction and worth. And so I knew enough to where I was like, at this point, like, I'd love to go to heaven, but I don't want to follow Jesus. Like, that's probably where I was at.
Okay. All right.
And at this point, my parents were still going to church, and there were seeds that were still getting planted that I can look back on and recognize. There were some people that tried to pour into my life.
Yeah.
And those seeds blossomed years down the line. But I wasn't having it. I had no interest.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went to Grace College, this school based on faith, based on the gospel. I went there really with the sole focus of just playing basketball.
Okay.
Getting decent enough grades so that I could keep playing and graduate. Like, that was my goal. That was my plan going into Grace. And God had other things in mind, as always, as he always does. And God put me in a room there at Grace where I was with two upperclassmen. All the guys were on the basketball team, and one of the guys in particular was like in the same position group as me. So he was a small forward, I was a small forward, and we were kind of playing for the same position. And so in practice, we were battling each other. We would go at each other.
Wow.
The competition was high. I mean, we had a good team. Like this particular roommate of mine was tough. He was a year above me. But he could ball.
Yeah.
And so we had some battles. But the one thing that from the very beginning I knew was that this guy was a Christian.
Uh-huh.
And he was unapologetic about his faith. Like he loved Jesus, and he was very clear about that. And that was one thing at the very beginning, like that stood out to me, because I'd wake up in the mornings and I would like see him reading his Bible.
Wow.
And then I would see like him and a couple of the other teammates that I had, like they would go to a certain room certain times of the week, and they're like praying together.
Interesting. And
what I later found out was like one of the guys they were praying for every week was me.
Oh man, and incredible.
So I saw these things, and like to that point in my life, like I didn't have a paradigm for that.
Yeah.
I had never had like peers that I actually respected, that I actually thought like these are some cool dudes. Like these are some guys like I would roll with, that I like admire, but they also follow Jesus. Like they also care very deeply about following the Lord and making him the priority of their lives. Like I had just never seen it that way before. And so slowly but surely, like my attention kind of was pricked to their examples. And then they were just fun guys to be around. Like I grew to have a deep love for those guys. And they knew I wasn't all the way in. They knew I wasn't saved. They knew that I still had a lot of questions and inconsistencies in my life. But they just kept praying. They kept sharing, and they kept getting closer to me. Mm. And that stood out to me, to where we went to Montana, of all places, in the dead of winter for a winter basketball tournament. Mm. That's about the last place, if you're a college basketball player, where you want to go play a winter basketball tournament. Middle of nowhere, Montana. Okay. It was cold as all get out. I mean, we know what that's like here up in Indiana. Yeah. And we went out there and played this tournament, and over the course of the 4 days, we brought this chaplain along, and he shared the gospel from kind of point A to point Z, and he walked us through every step of the process. And it got to a point where at the very beginning, I was kind of like, okay, I've heard this before. Like, the guys have been talking to me about this stuff. But just slowly over the course of those 4 days, it was like the Holy Spirit began to just like take the blinders off, to the point where as I heard about what Jesus did for sin, and how much he loved us, the sinners, it got to the point where I was just like, man, this is a guy that's worth following. Wow. Like, there's nobody like this dude. Mm. There's nobody that's done the things that he has done. And there's nobody that's gone to the extent that he's gone in order to make his followers his sons and daughters. Wow. And so that stood out to me. And it got to the place where I was like, man, I don't think I have any choice right now.
So are you saying like it became so real and the love became so authentic, you couldn't even deny it if you wanted to?
Yeah, so I was really in a place very similarly to like where Peter and the disciples were. Yeah. Where there's a point, I think it's in John 6, when Jesus is teaching, and there's many people that have been following Jesus that end up leaving. and deserting him.
Yeah.
And he turns to the disciples and he's like, okay, are you going to be next?
Yeah.
Like, are you guys going to leave? And Peter speaks up and he's like, Jesus, where are we going to go?
Wow.
Like, you're the one that has the words of eternal life.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like I was in a similar position where after I heard everything and the gospel had been laid out to me, just what I was feeling compelled to do was simply just trust in this man.
Wow.
And it like that's I remember sitting up in the top of the bleachers of this gym that we were playing this tournament in, and shortly before one of our games, I sat with that chaplain, and we ended up praying together, and he kind of explained some more things to me, and that's the moment that I can look back on. I'm like, that's when I chose to put my stake in the ground with the Lord and say, Jesus, like, you're going to be my God. Basketball is no longer going to have that place in my life. And so basketball, I mean, over the course of my college career, like, it was something I still did. It was something I still enjoyed. And God continued to sanctify me in that at different points. Basketball never really ended up being what I had hoped it would be. That's really the story of the rest of my basketball career.
Yeah.
It just never exactly turned out from an individual perspective.
Sure.
All that I had wanted it to be. But God used those moments and those hard moments where I had to die to myself, and I kind of had to put myself over to my team and my teammates and say, okay, even if I'm not going to have the role, or I'm not going to be starting, or I'm not going to get all the shots, if our team is better because I have a different role that's maybe not as flashy, so be it. And so God humbled me. He humbled me in a lot of ways over the next 4 years. But after I got saved, one of the first people I told was her name was Ariel, and she would become my wife.
Wow.
And she is a huge part of that testimony. Her and I had been friends, and I had honestly kind of avoided her. Because I was like, man, this girl, she loves the Lord. She's godly. She's uncompromising. Like, I had never met anyone like her before. And she really just blew every paradigm out of the water that I'd had for a somewhat sheltered Christian girl. She loved Jesus, and there was nothing that was going to change that. Especially not some crazy boy that I was at that time. And so when I got saved, she was one of the first people I wanted to know.
Wow, incredible.
And so over the several months after that, I began getting discipled by one of my teammates, and that was a huge part. We began diving into the Bible, diving into the book of John. Was really the first book of the Bible that I'd ever actually studied and considered what the words of it meant. And that was a beautiful time. That was a beautiful season. And really just my whole perspective on life and just my joy, it all just began to change. And the things that I was attracted to within my teammates and the ones that I saw walking with Jesus, I began experiencing those things in my own life. And that was an amazing gift. And so over the course of school, I really began feeling a tug towards ministry, towards vocational ministry. And at first I thought that overseas missions work is the direction that we were going to go. And Ariel, at the time we were dating, she felt that as well.
Oh wow.
And so we were pretty unified in some of those things. And so God gave her some experiences over the course of those remaining few years of college where we kind of got to the place where it's like, I don't know exactly where we're going to be, whether that's going to be stateside, whether that's going to be overseas. All we know is like we want to just be faithful together.
Yeah.
And we want to serve the Lord together. And so graduation happens. Some steps happened after that to where we stayed here in the States. I was doing some ministry at a small Korean church.
Wow.
Here in Elkhart, which was an amazing experience. And then I was at a place where, even though God had humbled me a lot through in basketball, and a lot of my expectations of basketball had begun to change pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
From a ministry standpoint, there at school, like, things began to escalate for me.
Interesting.
To where my senior year, I was given a pretty prominent role on campus, a pretty public role on campus to be the student body chaplain.
Okay.
So I was essentially, in some regards, like the student body pastor.
Okay.
And so I was in charge of all of our chapel services. I spoke quite a bit. I had different opportunities to speak because of that role. I had a team that helped organize our chapels. And so that was a pretty prominent role. That role gave me an insight as to kind of what it would look like to be in pastoral ministry. Yeah. And so I started getting quite a bit of good coaching, good mentoring from professors, people that I respected. And I also started getting quite a bit of encouragement from different people who confirmed to me, Tannan, I really feel like you're called to vocational ministry. Like, I think that you're called to preach. I think you've got some of these gifts. And so, again, as this humility within my basketball abilities and that part of my life was I was starting to kind of get a handle on that.
Sure.
There was an unseen balloon of pride that was slowly expanding within my life when it came to doing service for the Lord and ministering to the Lord, to the point where I graduated. I had this little ministry job that no one knew anything about at this little tiny Korean church. And then a guy, very similar to your story, how you said this guy comes up and offers you a job. God works in those ways. Yeah. And so at the time I was in between summers and I was working at a lumber yard, and I was filling up this trailer full of lumber for this customer. And after I was done loading it all up, he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, do you want another job?" And I was like, well, at the time, Ariel and I had just got married. I was open to anything. Yeah. I was like, I got to put some food on the table here.
Were you at the Korean church at this time?
I was still there, yeah. So I was working part-time at the Korean church, and then I was working part-time in this lumber yard as well.
Gotcha. Do you speak Korean?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
No, I love Korean food though.
Oh, okay, all right.
And that's one thing that we developed a deep love for during our time there. Kimchi.
Kimchi.
Mind blowing.
Okay.
We had lunch after service at that church every single Sunday. In fact, the Sunday meal after the service was actually viewed as the final act of worship.
Wow.
Within our Sunday service.
Okay.
So it wasn't just like a get together or a fellowship. It was the final act of worship within the Sunday service, which was really cool. And so we were doing that part-time, lumberyard. This guy comes in, "Hey, do you want another job?" And so I'm like, I'll hear you out. And so that led me to start working for a sewer and drain cleaning company.
Okay.
And that was a monumental season of my life. And I look back on this particular season and with quite a bit of confidence can say I don't think I would have been able to become a pastor. And in full-time vocational ministry if I had not gone through this season, because quite literally that job forced me on a day in, day out basis to literally walk through people's crap.
This literally sounds like the prodigal son.
Well, it was I mean, it was a little bit more fun, I think, than the prodigal son. Like, he was in the pig pit. Like, I was getting it was nasty. It was stinky. But there were parts of it that were actually kind of fun. Like, it was something new every single day. You got to get into some really interesting situations.
Okay.
And you never quite knew what the next day was going to bring.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed that that piece about the job. Mm-hmm. But there was one day that will always stick out to me, and I showed up for work, and I got the job tickets for the day, and I remember looking at the ticket and my heart just sank, and it said Grace College. And at this point,
the same Grace College you went to?
Yes. So I had just graduated about a year and a half prior to this.
If that's not the hand of the Lord.
And so I looked at this and it said Grace College, and my heart just sank, and I recognized, like, I'm gonna have to go with my coworker in our work van with the giant sewer and drain cleaning on the side of the van, and I'm gonna have to go, like, help pump this sewer line in the very middle of campus.
Wow. You said in the middle of campus.
Right in the
It wasn't in the
middle.
Side room.
Right in the smack dab middle.
Wow.
And I knew exactly where this was at. And I knew the side, there's like 3 or 4 sidewalks that intersect at this one spot. So it is a hub of activity.
Wow.
And so we end up pulling up there, and I'm doing my best to hurry and to be as fast as possible so that we can just get out of there. And
is your work attire obvious of what you would be doing?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't super obvious. I mean, I had a work shirt, I had the work logo on it, a pair of work pants, and a hat.
Okay.
And so it wasn't too abstract. But I felt this embarrassment inside of myself. And I just felt this, I was like, I just did not want anybody to see me. Because in my mind, it was like, if any of these professors, if any of these people see me working for this sewer and drain cleaning company.
Oh, man, you're right.
It's going to be like, man, like, how far has he fallen kind of thing.
Wow. Because
just a year and a half prior, they were like, man, you should be like preaching and full-time ministry, and you've got these gifts, and here I am pumping a sewer line.
Wow.
And so I felt this incredible amount of embarrassment. I did not want to be there. I wanted to be gone. And I remember looking up, and I saw a couple professors and people that I knew very well walking down the sidewalk, like towards me and towards this truck. And I remember I literally went around the back side of the van where you couldn't really see. I opened up the door, and I just kind of like crouched and like hunkered down on the back side of this van. Now, it's already been stated I'm 6'6".
Yeah.
So I'm not like how pathetic it was for this like 6'6" guy to be like trying to just crouch into this small little ball on the back side of this van.
Wow.
So that these people couldn't see me. And I remember, like, in that spot when I was crouched, literally hiding, it was like the Lord just like slapped me upside the face and said, like, who the heck do you think you are? Like, if you can't have dignity and you can't serve me and glorify me in this work, you're not going to be able to serve me and glorify me in anything.
Wow.
And I just remember feeling that, and just feeling that conviction just like flooding my soul, to the point where that moment changed my life. Like, when I got saved, and he gave me an awareness of my sin, and he gave me an awareness of who Christ was. That moment changed my life. But God doesn't stop changing your life after you put your trust in him.
Right.
He continues step by step, slowly but surely, continually changing your life to become more and more like Jesus. And that was one of those moments for me that I needed, because it was like in that moment, he just took that giant needle and just popped that balloon of pride. And from that moment on, God has taught me over and over again, it does not matter what you do, whether you're pumping sewer lines or preaching a sermon, you can glorify God in all of that.
100%.
You can have dignity, you can have confidence, you can have joy in pumping a sewer line or preaching a sermon, and God smiles down on all of it when it's done unto him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lesson I needed to understand. That's the lesson that I hadn't got yet.
Wow.
And so that moment was big for me. And a couple years passed, and I got an opportunity to be a children's pastor. And God continued. That was another step in my journey where God was like, "Okay, you want to be a pastor?
Yeah.
Go pastor the smallest people in the church." Big boy, you're 6'6". Like, why don't you get on your knees and go
get on their level.
Get on their level and minister to the little ones. And that, once again, I'd never really worked with kids before. But the opportunity that I had, it was life-changing. It softened me. It tenderized me in ways that I absolutely needed. Made me a better husband, and I would say certainly has made me a better father.
Yeah.
And so worked in that position for about 5 to 6 years. And then we felt the call to plant a campus here in South Elkhart, Indiana.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for the last several years. And again, that's been another growth step in the journey.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the beautiful things about God is once you step into his family, you become his son. He is faithful with our lives to the very end.
Yes, he is.
And not one of his sheep will be lost, the scriptures say.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to leave you high and dry. He's not going to leave you stranded in the side ditch. Like, he's going to take you where you need to go. All you have to do, and all we have to do is keep our hands open and trust. And he is going to take you to spots that you would have never imagined before.
Yep.
His ways are good, and I've seen that over and over again. And thankful, humbled that he would choose to enter into my life in that way.
Wow, dude, that's incredible. So you literally went from the sewers to the pulpit. Man, that's an incredible journey. And I think that is like one of the most important lessons anyone can learn in serving God and serving Jesus is it does not matter where you are on the totem pole of corporate or of ministry.
Yep.
It does not matter. You could be sweeping the floors. You can be picking up grass. You could literally be in any point in position, and God will give you influence to make sure that you are great.
Yep.
And as long as your attitude is towards him good and your arms are open, your hands are open, and you're serving him, he does look down at us with a smile.
Absolutely. Like, I would argue, Dom, like, I think there's probably weeks where there's pastors across our country. If you like the example that you're using, to your point, like the idea of the janitor that's sweeping the floors, there's some weeks like he's doing a better job at serving God than some of those pastors that are getting up and preaching a sermon.
Oh,
because there's sometimes we as preachers, like, we're tempted to kind of, we wrote this message and we put it together and we did it. And we kind of just like selfishly like put it out to our people before we have even submitted it over to God.
Wow.
Whereas that janitor, like, he's walking in his day like, God, this is yours. Like, I'm doing this for you. Like, that's where it's at. Like it doesn't matter if it's sweeping the floors or preaching the sermon. It's whether or not you are humbly offering it over to God. And when we do that, and we're living in that posture, God's going to blow the doors off of your life with joy and satisfaction and contentment unlike you've ever had before.
Wow. Incredible. Well, Tannan, man, thank you so much for being open and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
I know it was 100% valuable to me. I learned a lot about you. I learned a lot about just God's grace and how he just shows up for us in ways that we are not expecting. And he blows us out of the water with how he takes us from low places to incredible high mountain tops. So thank you again for sharing,
Absolutely,
brother.
Man.
Again, you've just been an incredible blessing to me. So I appreciate you, bro. And guys, this is the end of the episode, so I appreciate you guys sticking around, and we will see you guys in the next episode of The Grace Effect.
See you guys.